It's not recognizing my face either. Okay, so how's everyone doing today? Y'all doing good? Give yourself a round of applause if you woke up this morning. Come on, you can do better than that. We woke up this morning. So many people didn't have the privilege of waking up this morning. Thank you, Kim, for that wonderful introduction. And way to grow, Kim. She was not expecting it to be this large, and it's just going to continue to grow. So cheers to her growth and upward mobility. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all. Like Kim said, I have been in cybersecurity for 17 years, and I was going to come up here and do a presentation about patching vulnerabilities in operational systems within an organization. However, I am not. The first three speakers spoke about security risk and vulnerabilities, recon, sit and wait activity, living off the land, harvesting credentials, breaches that result in vulnerabilities, phishing, lateral movement, asset risk exposure, and unpatched vulnerabilities. My vulnerabilities are patched is going to touch base on all of that. So it's not showing here. Slideshow. Let me get out of here because it's not showing. Oh, there it is. So I'll start it over. Okay. So we're good. That's me, Dr. Lovelie Moore. My vulnerabilities are patched. This is a little bit about me. I have a DIT in cybersecurity information assurance. I got hooded last year. I'm currently BISO, Business Information Security Officer at Toyota, former Navy officer underneath the intelligence umbrella, 15 years building out cybersecurity operations centers, risk management, threat exposure management, third-party risk management, et cetera. My research is about implementing gamification into cybersecurity training and awareness to increase resiliency in the organization. But I was going to present on that, but I think this one is a perfect segue. I speak, I mentor, I'm all over, and I'm a resilience cybersecurity posture kind of person. And my book, My Vulnerabilities Are Patched. So my doctoral research talks about behavioral risk management. Let me tell you about the book cover and why I came up with that. We all have vulnerabilities in our systems. A lot of us walk around with chains on our hearts. A lot of us walk around with segmented emotional damage and a lot of stuff that we don't want to deal with and we don't want to face. So we lock up our heart and we keep everything guarded. In my career, I looked at enterprise vulnerability management. And during my doctoral research in cybersecurity awareness, I studied how systems fail. And I looked at operational risk, I looked at servers, I looked at infrastructure, and I noticed something very, very consistent. Every system has internal weaknesses, outdated operating systems, and unpatched vulnerabilities, misconfigured permissions, open ports that are being scanned, etc. You know where I made the connection? Humans and computers have the same exact vulnerabilities. But we do not patch them. We continue going on and on and on, and we work on patching vulnerabilities in our boss's environment. If you're a business owner, you want to make sure your most valuable assets have patches on them so that you can't get breached or exploited by those threat actors. So some of those breaches were written years ago. Some of us are carrying around generational trauma. Some of us pass down generational curses. I call that passing down malicious code. And the realization became the foundation of my framework. And I came up with a framework and a term called I'm Patched. And it's an architecture and it's a framework that we also need to live by. Click. Okay, this clicker is not working. So I'm going to play this little video. It's my official book trailer. Let's see if this will play for you. Do I press the middle button? The mouse?
Intention. Servers aren't patched because they are broken. They are patched because the world is unpredictable. Humans learn the same way. Sometimes the hard way. We call it love. We call it loyalty. We call it strength. But often, it's exposure. Healing doesn't mean shutting down. It doesn't mean disappearing behind walls. It means learning when to pause. when to verify, when to revoke access that was never earned. Boundaries are not rejection, they are protection. Self-worth is not pride, it's a patch. And rest is not failure. It is the update that keeps you running. You were never defective, never too much, never the problem. You were unpatched. My vulnerabilities are patched. Healing begins when you stop blaming the system and start protecting it. And remember, you are your most valuable asset.
Sorry it's a little low. Hope you were able to catch some of that. But it's on my website, unpatched.com, if you'd like to see it again. Okay. So we're going to look at the unpatched systems, okay, and what it means to be unpatched. What did I just do? Okay, let's go back here. Nope, not that one. This one, okay. We're going to look at unpatched systems, okay? And unpatched systems increase the risk of the attack surface. Unhealed pain increases the emotional surface area. So what remains unpatched? There are access that are still open, patterns that signal vulnerability. So I'm going to ask you some of your question. You ever attract the same person over and over and over? Nobody? You never attract the same person? Like, what did I do wrong? So in 2022, I began my research in myself because I realized I attract the same person, same soul and different souls, same skin and old wine and new skin. It's what is it that I'm doing? So I started to do research to see where are my open areas at, and then I started to relate them to cybersecurity and working in that field because in cybersecurity, we manage risk. Our risk tolerance is really high. We accept the risk. It ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of mentality. So that's how we go on living our personal lives, okay? So what patterns in your life are signaling open vulnerabilities? In both digital and human systems, unpatched systems do not collapse immediately. They often operate, they function. They look like you and me. We walking around as servers. Nobody sees what we go through unless you know how to wear it well or unless you don't know how to wear it well. And some people can function that way. They appear stable until the right exploit finds them. And I can tell you all of us have been exploited. At some point in our life, we have been exploited. Known vulnerabilities attract target exploits. Banking systems, everybody wants to get in. All of the threat actors want to exploit banks. They want to exploit your PII, your PFI, your PHI if you work in healthcare. But we put protection mechanisms around those. But we have threat actors that are after us too, both male and female. It's not a gender or race thing. Exploitation happens to humans generally. Sometimes it happens for your children, your best friends, your parents, your family, your job. All of it you can be exploited by those. Okay, and pain actually works in the same way. Unhealed wounds create behavioral patterns. A lot of people are walking around still dealing with childhood trauma. And how we have to deal with it and how it affects our relationships going forward. And patterns create predictability, okay? They predictably creates access, and access becomes an exploitation, okay? It's not patched. It's never been protected. It's completely left exposed, and that exposure will be tested. The same way threat actors knock on your environment to see what port is open, people do the same thing to us. Repeated behaviors create detectable signals. Sometimes we don't pay attention to them, but they're right there. They tell us. We see them, but we don't pay attention to them, which I'll call them red flags, but we don't pay attention. Just like your security system in your environment, you don't configure your technology stack to actually detect the bad guys. You got garbage in, you got garbage out, so nobody knows what to see, but their signals are there. I was at an organization, and they were doing recon activity for 4 years until the big one hit. And we noticed it, but nobody paid attention. I don't know why I'm putting it there. Unmonitored exposure accelerates compromise. So, if your organization, they were talking up here about vulnerability management and risk management, if it's not monitored, we just keep it and we go and we operate day to day and we just don't pay attention to it until the big one hits. Okay? And I'm patched. My slogan begins with internal identification. In your organization, you hire some of these great vendors to do that for you, identification, but we don't do that for ourselves. So we have to understand the parallelogram in identifying where we need to be patched. System vulnerabilities and human equivalents. Okay, so we're going to go here. Outdated software is unhealed emotional patterns, okay? In cybersecurity, outdated software is dangerous because it runs on old code. Old code that no longer accounts, you can't protect current threats. We running around with old code. We running around operational and vulnerable at the same time. And emotionally, we do the same thing. We rely on outdated responses. We rely on outdated defenses. We rely on defenses that we know that we've always done it. It's always good at deflecting the bad guy. You know, we put those, we call them trust boundaries and walls, right? But in your firewall system, we have some of that. I'll talk about that later. Because we put a firewall up and we don't do a zero trust. We do a allow all, allow any, allow everything, and then we will figure it out later. Your weak firewall. Okay, your weak firewall is poor personal boundaries that allow unwanted influences or manipulation. A firewall controls traffic, ingress and egress, north and south in your environment. It determines what's get in and what stays out. When a weak firewall is an attacker's into your environment, because some of us are so wanting to feel that sense of belonging that we just let anybody in. We just keep down our defenses, and that's something that we have to work on, okay? It's a configuration issue. A configuration issue is a boundaries. They operate in the same way. Some of us struggle to say no. I used to struggle to say no. You don't have to raise your hand. I'm an open book, you know, because I've been patched for a while, so it's okay. So I can wear my story on my sleeve and be okay and know that I won't be exploited. And hopefully one day you all will be able to do the same. When we get overextended, we tolerate behavior that violates our values. We are misconfiguring our internal security perimeter. They're not emotional walls. These are weak firewall and poor personal boundaries. Data corruption. Okay, data corruption is also the same as distorted self-belief or confusion. Okay, some people are living on that same data corruption. You ever had a toxic relationship and you'll never amount to nothing? You ain't gonna be nothing. You just like your daddy. You just like your mama. You just like your uncle. You just like baba. You know, we all deal with that. You know, I think a lot of males deal with that a lot more than females if they don't adhere to a certain level of standard that expectation is being put on them. And we start to replay those distorted beliefs over and over in our head. And I think I missed that one, okay. So when data becomes corrupted, decision-making fails, the system is running, and its output is flawed. Internalized trauma functions as corrupted data. It distorts your perception, it reshapes your identity, it alters how you interpret events, and you begin to make decisions based off damaged information and unrecognized truth. Lastly, we have malware infections. That is toxic relationships or environments. Malware does not always announce itself. It installs itself quietly, okay? It embeds in normal processes. It begins to alter performance gradually. So, you know what malware looks like in your environment, but when it hits us personally, we don't know it. We might feel it. We might have that little gut instinct that some of us sisters have, like, oh, this ain't right, but we don't pay attention to it, and that's malware slowly embedding itself in our daily walks of life. It begins to show in toxic dynamics. They operate the same way. You don't notice the corruption, but over time, you start to see it, and your clarity starts to shift. Your behavior changes, and you eventually start operating differently. Not because you're broken, it's because something foreign has integrated into your system, and healing requires detection before you can remove it, okay? And this is one of the characters in my story. His name is Eugene. I removed the audio from this one on purpose, so you can just see what he's dealing with. So Eugene was married to a psychiatrist, and these are real people that I interviewed and helped along their healing journey. No, I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist at all. I do have a PhD, and I study systems, and we are systems, and we operate the same way. Let's see if I get this to play. I'm going to speak through it. So she talks down on him a lot, okay? He did everything that he could. He tended to take the blame. He thought it was love. He thought it was pure. He thought it was safe. And he said it didn't start out like that because first he loved her and she looked like she loved him, right? But it all changed the moment she gave him access. He thought that she listened. He thought that she understood him. She was trained in a way to mentally manipulate him because she was a psychiatrist. Her actions and words slowly diminished something in him. But Eugene did not see the malicious code that she was running. And as it continued, it remained unchecked. It became internalized. To him, to Eugene, what felt like protection became permission. And what felt like guidance became control. But he didn't know the difference because everything to him sounded just like love. He accepted it. Not all attacks are allowed. Some are subtle, measured, and repeated. At first, it sounded like concern, like expertise, just like systems. We don't fail because we're weak. We fail because access was granted where protection was needed. So there is no open vulnerability that you can't be patched. So eventually, he started to read my book. We started to talk. And he stopped questioning the malicious code and started to listen to himself, start to operate differently, and got to the point to where he was able to deflect her malicious code right back to her. And it all happens one moment, one sentence, and one time of clarity at a time. But control doesn't always look like abuse. Eugene is in a happier state now. Not after he read my book, but after, oops, stop. Nope, don't do that. Too much. Sorry. After he read my book. Come on, go next. Okay, so now we're going to move on. How much time do I have? Because I'm really fast. Any questions? Anybody want to ask them questions? Because I can talk forever. No questions? Y'all gonna wait to the end, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So threat detection, in your environments, you have threat detections, EDRs in place to kind of detect what kind of bad activity is happening in your environment. You look for pattern recognition. You look for access control. You have threat monitoring in place. You have corrective reinforcement. Some of those things are part of your threat detection processes if you have those implemented in your point here. Okay. So pattern recognition, it keeps repeating itself in life and in leadership. We all recognize the patterns, like I said earlier. We see recurring vulnerabilities that have not been normalized. We see and recognize signals and we ignore them. We see when people are not meant to be in our life, but we still give them access because we love them. We love our environment. We accept the risk. I like that legacy system. It's making me money. It's generating all of this money, but this has a lot of open vulnerabilities. It's okay. We'll just put it in the segment and network, and then we'll wait till a break later and fix it later. That's the mentality I see in a lot of organizations that I work for. And I'm not saying Toyota. Okay? I got to put that disclaimer out there. So we have to look for the patterns in people because people show us who we are the first time and we just generally don't pay attention to it. Just like threat actors let us know the first time that they're going to hit us with ransomware, when you see that blue screen of death, it's too late. They're already in. Access control. This is a big one. Anybody in here work in identity and access management? Yeah. You have an access control list? Yeah. Least privilege, whoever, you give them the permission, just what they need to do their job. You got your admins in the building, have all the high level of access. That's what we do in our life. We give everybody administrative access to us immediately. We keep our ports open. Some of us like to tell our story from the beginning that do not understand who they're speaking to. They don't know their audience and how someone would take that information and use it against you. Kind of like when you get a third-party vendor to come into your environment and they scan and they give you a report. These are all your open vulnerabilities and all your access points. And then boom, next thing you know, you're hiring them to fix them because you got hit. I don't know, that's just something I've experienced. Because we gave them the keys to the castle. We opened up ourselves to the wrong people at the wrong time and gave them wrong access. Okay, who currently has access to my time? These are questions that you're going to ask yourself. Who currently has access to my emotional bandwidth? Have I granted permission without verification? I'm not going to say, I'm a single woman, but I'm a single woman. But when people try to get into my life, I trust but verify. That's something that we do in our environment. We trust but verify, but we got to be very, very careful who we trust because sometimes it's too late to verify because they already exploited you. You already gave them access, and now they understand how to mentally manipulate you. Ask yourself, have I granted permission to someone without verification in my life personally? Where are my boundaries misconfigured? What can I do better to protect myself from crying at night, from feeling depressed, from feeling emotionally strained and financially drained and physically and mentally torn because we gave people the wrong access and our boundaries were misconfigured? Okay. Threat monitoring. I have a friend there was someone in her inbox on Instagram for about a year, messaging her, learning her ways. I saw your post. You look so beautiful. Can I take you to dinner? Can I do this for you? And for a year, she said no. Guess what happened after she let him in? He did his recon of this activity. He learned everything that she did because she posted it on social media, and she let him in after 1 year. And he came in like a knight in shining armor, doing everything that he saw in her life. And eventually, 10 months later, she was emotionally broken because when she needed him, he left. She had nothing. He exploited every bit. Her family, he did lateral movement in her family and spread poison and malicious code all throughout her family, through her generations from the top down, and then left all of them in a state of shock, like, oh my God, how could he have? I could have never saw that. Same thing in our environment. Nobody knows who's going to attack you. We always say when it's going to happen. It's going to happen in your cybersecurity stack, in your environment. Somebody's going to exploit your vulnerabilities, but you have to put the protections in place to make sure that they don't. So you have to ask yourself, what behavioral anomalies am I overlooking? If you know that you don't like someone that doesn't brush their teeth and you keep kissing them after they're not brushing their teeth, then that's something that you're overlooking. If you know that you don't like somebody who can't speak to you on an educational high level, and that's something that you're overlooking, then you're overlooking it. If you know that somebody, if you have children in the building that's trying to get in your house because you have children and you let them in your house, that's something that you're overlooking. Do you notice subtle shift in behavior before the signal even comes to fruition? Is somebody, coming to you, males and females, we deal with this. How much money you got? What you look like? Where you live? What can you do for me? It's not what we do for each other. It's always what can you do for me? How can I take? We all have that hole in our side that people draw from because we allow that activity and that behavior to happen. So during my research, I asked myself these questions. Am I being proactive, or am I waiting for damage to happen? And you'll hear a little bit about my story on how I came to this. What am I doing wrong? Where am I misconfigured? Where's my operating system outdated? What am I doing to manage my access control list? How am I performing active threat monitoring? I used to walk around with my walls high, real high, all the time. Nobody could get in. You look at me, I'm from New York, if you can't tell. And New Yorkers, we don't like nobody. Somebody say hi to you in New York, first thing you say, I ain't got no money. But I was like that all my life because of what I've been through. And I didn't know how to maintain that. So I know that I probably expelled a lot of positive people that were supposed to be in my life because I had walls up that I didn't need to have because of emotional damage that I was carrying from the past. We have corrective reinforcement. When patterns surface, do I reinforce change or do I revert to the defaults? Do I reinforce change, or do I take on the accountability and say, maybe it's me, maybe I'm doing something wrong that's triggering them, or maybe, it's my fault because I left the door open, or maybe it's my fault because of X, Y, and Z. And we're not going to talk about the behaviors and the mental patterns of certain people because we all know what we deal with. And some of us do that, in leadership, a lot of times, if you have a leadership that is hard and leads by iron fist, your analysts below you are going to always feel like they're doing something wrong. What do I need to do to make sure everything is right so I don't get that fist placed on me? So those are some corrective reinforcements that we need to ask ourselves. What intentional adjustments have I implemented? Am I adjusting my sleep schedule because my better half likes to stay out all night and I want to stay up and wait for him? Am I adjusting my work pattern and my work schedule because I have to do X, Y, Z? Am I making changes in my personal self to make someone else better for me when we need to look at the picture holistically from the top down? Am I patching, or am I just rebooting? Because you can reboot your system over and over and over and over, and the same vulnerabilities are still going to be there. The same poor patterns are still going to be there. The same malicious code is going to be there. Anybody remember that CrowdStrike thing? Right? A lot of people who don't know about cyber thought that was a cyber breach. No, we gave somebody access to the roots of our foundation, and they got us, right? Almost took down the whole world, but that's a whole nother story. I won't go there. So you have to look at your healing protocol. Have I addressed the root cause of what I'm going through? Or are these just symptoms that I'm putting a Band-Aid on? What unresolved experience still influence my decision making? Have I really forgiving that person from the past who actually exploited me? And am I passing on that exploited damage to the next person in my life? And now they have to deal with it. And then they have to come patch me because I'm broken, because I think they need. You know how that rolls down. We don't give ourselves enough grace. Or are we just band-aiding? What does structured healing look like for me? These are questions you ask yourself. If you are one of the lucky few to get a copy of the book that's here, there's a journal in there at the end of every chapter that you can write down how you're feeling. Have you felt these? Are these decision areas that I leave open? Where am I giving my access? Who I'm giving permission to? Do I have a healing protocol in place? What does structured healing actually look like for you? And if you don't get my book today and you do end up getting it, just leave and ask yourself that question. What structured healing look like for me? Where am I vulnerable and what needs to be patched in me? Okay. And we have exposure management. Where am I overexposed emotionally or professionally? What environments increase my attack surface? Now, if I tell y'all my ex-husband, I divorced him 20 years ago, if he walk in here, I don't know how I might act. You might have to, kind of catch me, because that's probably a weak spot for me. I can't say that healing is constant. I don't know if I have any other vulnerabilities that have yet to be exploited. We get CVEs almost every day coming out. You got to exploit it. You got to patch this, patch this, patch this, patch this. Sometimes we don't have the tools to patch it. So I'm not saying that we're going to be fully healed, because healing is a continuous journey. And it's not something that we're going to stop doing, but we're going to identify it when the threat actors come, if they try to patch a vulnerability that is already exploitable. Because we look at familiarity in a lot of stuff. If it's familiar, I like it, I can function in this area. Some people sit in chaos. Your SOC, they look at noise all day, they got dash fatigue, but they go to work every day. It's familiar chaos until they realize that, I'm looking at garbage here. Can you give me some real stuff to triage so I can go find some real stuff in this environment? Can I do some real threat hunting? You giving me garbage. I can't do anything with this. But some people work like that. What needs to be reduced, limited, or encrypted? Those are some questions you ask yourself. And on this slide, lastly, you have defensive resiliency. A lot of the people that spoke today in my research talks about being resilient in your organization. Can I recover from a cyber attack? Can I recover from a breach? Can I recover? How can we remain operational after we get hit with the big R? If you pay the big R once, do you pay it twice? Those are some questions that we ask ourselves. But is my resilience reactive or proactive? What did the gentleman say earlier? I was taking notes. We have to rethink our resiliency structure. We have business impact analysis, but we don't have human impact analysis. We have to ask those questions. What systems support my stability under stress? Some questions to ask. I can't answer that question for you. I can answer it for me. If I'm tested tomorrow, how would I hold up, or would I collapse? We don't check on our strong friends. We don't check on the people who appear that they got it all together on the outside. But I'm telling you, they vulnerable, they crying. They just don't let you see it, because they're dealing with a lot of other emotional stuff and other vulnerabilities that they haven't assessed yet. So we got to do a risk assessment on ourselves, because we're servers, we're walking around servers. Talked about AI, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's the great, the Terminator, and iRobot. It's going to learn your pattern. We have to learn our own patterns so we know how to protect ourselves. If we're tested, will we be able to remain resilient if our vulnerabilities were ever exploited? I spoke about IAM already, okay? In cybersecurity, we verify before granting access. We have multi-factor authentication, credential validation, zero trust principles, which is really hard to implement. I've tried several times. That's a trust wall that doesn't work. Human task, self-definition. We ask, who am I? Am I dependent of my past wounds? Am I independent of my past wounds? Am I operating from clarity or from survival mode? If identifying verification, if I identify and verify my process is not complete, then access becomes unstable. Like I said earlier, we give access to everybody. If you're one of those, if you're an extrovert, if you're an empath, if you're an internalist, we give access. People find a way to get into the ones that are resolved, that don't say anything, they sit down. Somebody's going to find a way to get in there because they don't know what's going on. That fear of the unknown is always going to be exploitable. So we have to look at your access provisioning. In enterprise environments, access is assigned based on the role or necessity. Not on emotion, not on pressure, not on urgency. Human task is intentionally permissioning. We are given that permission because we are humans and we like that sense of camaraderie. Who am I allowing into my emotional infrastructure? Who has influence over my decisions? And your access to these people should be strategic and not reactive. You should be able to see it and know it because we feel it and we understand it, but we don't pay attention to it. We overlook it, we overthrow it, but we still give access. How many times have someone in your life or in your environment, how many times have you seen the same threat in your environment hit? Oh, didn't we just patch for this? Oh, but they found a back door. You didn't patch over here because we don't know our environment fully as cybersecurity professionals. If you ask a lot of professionals in here, do they know where their most valuable asset sits in the environment? Half of them will tell you no. Half of them will tell you they don't have a segmented environment. Half of them are running on a flat network. They will tell you no, they have no idea who's living off their land. Like I said earlier, it should not be reactive, it should be proactive. We're going to look at least privilege enforcement. In security, we limit permissions to reduce exposure. That's that internal exposure. You know, you give somebody the keys to the castle inside, they could do anything. But we don't limit it because it's easy just to give Bob and Jim the same role, give Sarah and Clara the same role, but they have totally different functions in the organization. But we just don't limit the access, okay? Because we don't know how to reduce the exposure in ourselves. In life, we often overshare. What I've been through ain't what I look like, etc. We overtrust, we overexpose. And the human task is disciplined vulnerabilities. Transparency is very powerful. In your organization, you have a transparency. We're transparent. We make sure everybody in the environment knows everything. But we don't do that to somebody that we first bring into our life, being completely transparent if you don't know how to manage the attack surface that may follow. Okay, I'm not telling you not to be transparent. I'm just telling you to be careful who you're transparent with. Okay, because transparency is powerful. But unrestricted exposure increases the risk and the attack surface, and not everyone needs root access, right? Going back to that CrowdStrike issue, okay? Continuous authentication, just because someone has access once they don't need to maintain it. Give Lovelie the permission to do this upgrade in the server and then cut her access in 24 hours because that's as much time as she needs to make sure she upgrades or installs or whatever it is. But the moment that I pass that 24 hours and I realize I made a mistake, I can't go back. We have to manage that, okay? Does not mean to maintain it indefinitely. When the cybersecurity behavior is monitored and relationships and leadership behavior must be authenticated by trust. The human task is that behavioral verification. Do actions align with words? I know you heard that before. You keep saying you're going to do something, it don't happen. You're going to say you're going to do this, it don't happen. You're going to work on this, but it doesn't happen. You know, communication is an ongoing thing, but sometimes communication can be overstimulating if there's no actions after it. Okay, kind of when you put somebody on a performance plan, communication until they're excommunicado. Anybody know what that word came from? We don't got no John Wick fans in here. Oh, that sucks. And trust can be permanent, but it doesn't always have to be. You know, it has to be maintained. And access revocation, I won't go too deep into that one because I pretty much spoke about that. You know, when they're no longer making sure that we're taken care of in our servers, once we start to take care of our servers the way that we want other people to take care of our servers in our environment, then we're going to be okay. Okay, and self-governance. That's the one thing. We put governance around all of the controls in our environment, but we don't put self-governance in place. We often walk around with all of these weak spots, open ports, open access, vulnerabilities. We get targeted by whoever it is that's out there, male and female, no matter what the gender is. We're all targets because we have all of the information in us. We have our PII, our PHI, our PFI, our emotional HI, all of that is in us, okay? So I have a few slides left. What's my time look like? Any questions? Because I'm looking for the big teleprompter. I'm good? Okay. Yeah, I'm still good. So my book is called My Vulnerabilities Are Patched, and it doesn't talk about my personal vulnerabilities. It's going to help you walk around saying that your vulnerabilities are patched, that I'm in a state of good, a mental clarity where I understand where the attacks can be coming from. Because in cybersecurity, we don't negotiate known vulnerabilities, and we don't tolerate them. We know if we're going to lose money, we put a hard stop on where we're going to be able to lose money, punitive damages, reputational damages, we stop that immediately. And a lot of you work for employers that you actually apply those patches to their systems for them to make sure that they maintain operations. We don't excuse them. We don't normalize them. We patch them because understanding that exposure left unmanaged becomes exploitation. And yet, many of us tolerate internal vulnerabilities. We need to look at that known vulnerability demand action that we need to put. Unmanaged exposure invites exploitation. We know that in our environments. We know that in our personal lives. We know that everywhere. We know that unmanaged exposure is going to be the downfall of an organization. I know many organizations that lost everything because of unmanaged exposure, unmanaged vulnerabilities, because they wanted to, it didn't bother us before. Nobody knows who we are, but it just takes that one click, that one instant, that one person that you give access to that becomes disgruntled, and now they're in your environment and they have the keys to the castle and they can take everything down. How many of us tolerate internal vulnerabilities? I did. You don't have to raise your hand. Just ask yourself that, okay? Would we ever allow that inside of our internal network? If we, as SOC analysts, and I'm going to go to my SOC brain, and somebody's running Metasploit, and you see something happen, you're going to jump on it. Oh my God, we need to get the threat involved team. We're going to get this out that environment because this is something, it's exciting. But then when we go home, we have internal vulnerabilities that we don't jump on. We don't have threats that we don't jump on and get them out of our environment. We protect servers with urgency, but we don't protect our server with urgency. Okay? Operational risk is never ignored in cybersecurity and information technology and organizations as a whole. We protect data with discipline. We protect infrastructure with governance. But when it comes to ourselves, we delay the patch. We stay silent. We accept it. And it continues to run on and on and on and on. Our personal risk we should take care of our personal risk the same way we take care of operational risk in the environment. We don't have to have a whole risk tolerance. I'm going to accept this risk. I'm going to accept this risk. I'm going to accept this risk. I've always been like that. He's always been like that. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Eventually, all of that's going to weigh down on you heavy, and you're going to explode. Okay? We excuse the misconfiguration. We keep granting access, and it's unacceptable to operate that way. Okay, resilience, human resilience is engineered. Operational resilience is also engineered. Okay, and we should be able to look at that. Because unpatched systems get breached and unpatched patterns get exploited, resilience is not emotional, it's architecture. And if you can engineer protection for an enterprise, you can engineer protection for yourself. You can patch that vulnerability, protect the system, and operate securely. Okay? If you believe operational resilience is critical to the enterprise's survival, what about our enterprise? What about us? Because is this thing on? If something happened to you today and you are operating vulnerabilities and you get exploited, or something happened and you're no longer on Earth and you can't applaud for yourself because you woke up this morning, you know you're going to be an open wreck, right? They're going to fill your job right away. You know, it's going to take a while for you to heal if you lose your spouse. But eventually, you want to get out the house. You're going to move on with life because that's what life happens. So those are some of the things that we need to look at, because personal resilience must be just as critical as operational resilience. Protect the system and operate secure, okay? So here's a little bit of my journey. I tell you, I'm an open book. I'm not afraid to talk. I wasn't always a cybersecurity executive. I grew up in foster care. I bounced from home to home, from home to home to home to home to home, from birth to 16 years old. And as I grew up, I was unstable. I was corrupt. People called me caution because I wasn't nice. I always wanted to fight because my reality was distorted. Attachment felt temporary because I bounced from home to home my entire life. I had attachment issues, okay? My security felt conditional. Later in life, I survived a domestic violence issue. I was married for 20 years in a really bad domestic violence situation, and I overcame that. That's part of my journey. That's when I started, because I was like, why I keep attracting my ex-husband? He sounds just like my ex-husband. Ooh, you sound just like my ex-husband. But I didn't listen to it. You know, I let it in temporarily in my life. But, you know, I have to realize that's something that was cold that I was running. And what I didn't understand at the time was I was just surviving situations I was replaying patterns. I was running on outdated code. I kept attracting the same person, a different body, different names, different access levels. But each one of them, I did the same exact thing. I granted them access. And I told my story. And then I wondered why I felt drained in the end of my story with these people. And not just the opposite sex, females as well, that I gave everything to, that I opened up and I poured to. They found a way to exploit that as well. So, where's this one here? So I repeated relational patterns. I passed down that same code to my daughters and wonder why they were attracting stuff that was toxic for them, because I passed down that code. We call it generational curses. We call it malicious code. If the application at the top has bad code, everything that runs on it is going to have that same bad code. Okay? So at the same access level, because internally I was running on outdated code, I struggled with feeling unloved. I struggled with extreme trust issues, like I mentioned earlier. And there is when I realized through my career in cybersecurity that I was protecting enterprise systems better than I was protecting myself. I was enforcing access controls at work, but not in my personal life. That realization changed everything for me. And I didn't just heal emotionally, I engineered my own operational and self-resilience, okay? Like I said, I struggle with trust, and I'm just talking. I know what this stuff looks like, so pardon me if I'm speaking a little faster than I should. I am almost at the time here, so a deep dive summary of my book, My Vulnerabilities Are Patched, is not just a memoir, it's a framework. It applies cybersecurity architecture to human behavior, examining vulnerabilities through a systems lens. It includes real-life encounters of individuals who recognize recurring patterns. It talks about people who have internal logic bombs that just go ape at the drop of a dime, who implode or explode. It talks about women who attract the same type of men that their father was, or women who attracted the same type of sexual exploitation that they experienced, that the witnessing of their parents dealing with that, whether it's drugs or alcohol or stuff that we pass down, okay? I also talk about the behavioral risk that we accept, decision-making, recovery, and demonstrating that vulnerability flows through identifiable, comfortable, repeatable patterns. My book, it reframes resilience as something that's engineered and not accidental. Each chapter has a journey journal, and you can continue the journey on. And the main idea is because the same discipline we use to secure systems at work can be secured and implemented in us as human beings, okay? So, in conclusion, I'm probably a little early here. Cybersecurity we patch to prevent. In life, we must patch to prevent. Vulnerability can be examined through a systems lens and a personal lens, and emotional exposure often mirrors unmanaged risk. Healing functions as a corrective control. Boundaries operate as preventive safeguards. Resilience is not an accident, it's engineered and maintained. In cybersecurity, we try not to wait for catastrophe. We scan, we assess, we patch, we scan, we assess, we patch. It's continuous monitoring. Not because something has already occurred, it's because we understand exposure increased risk. And in my research and in my life, it taught me that people operate the same way. Unpatched patterns become predictable. Predictability becomes access. Access becomes exploitation. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's simply exposure without control. Emotional exposure mirrors unmanaged risks. Healing functions as corrective controls. Boundaries operate as protective safeguards and resilience. And it's not accidental, it's not luck. It's not a personality, it's engineered, it's reinforced, it's maintained. And I would just like to leave you with this before I open up the floor for any questions. If you have any questions for me, a lot of us say in life, what's the worst that can happen? Let's change the narrative and say, what's the best that can happen? And watch your world change. So, remember, you are your most valuable asset. Any questions? Oh, I love it. Oh, I got a question. Thank you. I got a question right here. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting, comparing some of the work we do on a day-to-day basis and creating an analogy with human behaviors. As a SOC analyst, someone who looks at action equal to block, action equal to failed all day, we as security professionals are always bound to find the fault, find the missed connections, find the things that should not be allowed. What are your thoughts on, as humans, if we deploy a mentality of patching every single vulnerability we have, what do you think? Don't you think we will miss out on some of the successful connections we have with humans?
No, not at all. Because if you're going to have a successful connection with a human, you're going to have a successful connection with the human. You don't have to, that person's not going to try to exploit your vulnerabilities or your weak points or your areas of access that you're not managing. If somebody's coming into your life and you notice that they're draining you and their energy is not for you and that you're not vibing right, or they're trying to take advantage of your niceness or your meekness or your humbleness, that person is not a meaningful connection.
Right. That was my point. Like, if you don't give them the first chance, how do you know that they're trying to exploit your vulnerability?
They'll tell you. They'll tell you right away in their past relationships. I'll give you an example. One of my former friends, I told him about my marriage and what I went through, and he would constantly say, "He used to do this for free? He did that for free? Man, what a lucky guy he is. He did that for free." And guess what he did? He leaned in on everything that I did for my ex-husband in that relationship, and he started to try to mimic those behaviors. Trust me, I've interviewed thousands of people. I've seen a lot of stuff happening. And it's not that you're walking around with walls up, okay? I don't want you to make it the distinction that you got to walk around and not give people that first chance. You can give people that first chance, but you have to identify the spots where they're going to try to take advantage of you once they get into your operating system. You can let people in. Like, I used to walk around with trust cards. It was a full zero trust. But I give people the opportunity to trust them until I verify. And when I verify that they're not good for me, I patch it. And I know, and I put myself first, because that's the one thing that we really fail to do.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. That's it? No more questions? All right. Let me do this one here. If you'd like to continue the conversation or ask me any other questions, you can follow me on LinkedIn. If you want to talk about security, I can talk about security. You can talk about my vulnerabilities are patched. We can talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about. If you know some people that have some organizations where they're looking to speak to girls or boys who grew up in foster care, point me in that direction. I am here to heal as many people as possible. Thank you.